Before we start, let's have a word of prayer. Loving Father in heaven, we thank you for your love and your blessings. We thank you for your health ministry that you have given us. We've had it a long time in this church, and it's about time that we get out and tell the world. They're ready for it, Father, and we want to use this health message to help close this earth's history. It is our prayer in Jesus' name that you will be with our words and our listening. In Jesus' name, amen. I brought with me, and afterwards you can come up and look at it, just to show you. This is in a, somebody was asking, we were talking about diet with diabetes and stress and now cancer, and people were saying, well, how do we know what we're getting in the store? And I'm saying you don't, most of the time, even in organic vegetables. So it is my desire to as many of you that want to find out how to grow your own, and I mean year-round, in a very little close quarters, and grow your cruciferous vegetables, which I call my cancer vegetables. Because the story, for those who have not heard this, we were growing, when I was first introduced to these mini vegetables and micro greens, they call them. The gentleman that owned the farm's mother had cancer and his dad had cancer. And he heard my talk and he said, what can I do? Because I'm growing these things. So I went out to his farm, which was in North Hillsborough County. And I said, you're already growing these microgreens. Let's do some of these cruciferous vegetables. So we did. We sent them off to be tested at ABC Labs. Some of you have heard this already. ABC Labs will do an analysis on your product. And when they came back, they called us and said, would you please resend your sample because we've contaminated it. And so we resent the sample up to them, and then we got a phone call. So what are you doing with this broccoli? Because it has omega oils in it, it's not supposed to. Well, I'm going to tell you something that God has given us. Is His richness of His foods if we just grow them properly. We discovered that in growing these mini vegetables, microgreens and what have you, we were using a little secret that I learned from a psychiatrist of all things. And what he discovered was that he could get all of these minerals that has been washed off of our land after the flood. It was all in the ocean. And he was harvesting these minerals from the ocean and getting over 90 of them. These are micro minerals. In our soil out here in Florida, we have between 8 and 12. That's it. Soil in Alabama, we had 12. North Carolina, they had about 10. You would think it would be getting richer. Where did they go? When the water washed off the land, it went to the ocean. And it's still there. It's just for us to harvest. The only problem with that is when you harvest it, it's still got salt in it, right? And plants don't like salt, do they? Well, I was surprised to find out that they do quite well if you put the material at their root level. So what I want to show you is the growth. Leaking, so I'm going to hold it up over this. Can you see the roots? This is 7 days old. I want to share something with you about this broccoli. This broccoli, we discovered, had it had between 20% to 2,000% higher levels of the particular nutrients we were looking at. Now, what does that equate to? You got a plant like a broccoli that you would eat just a small handful of these microgreens, and you would get the same amount of nutrients if you would eat 10 full heads of broccoli. So when we talk about using nutrition to treat certain types of conditions, I want you to think about this. And if you've got any questions about this, I'll relay how to do it. It's so simple. and it's very easy to get the materials to grow them. You can grow them in your house. Just a minute, Chet. You can grow them in your house. You can grow them in the black pan that I have there is a 10 by 20, and you can grow 2 of those in front of a window and have microgreens every 8 to 9 days. And you get your full complement, power-packed with nutrition for fighting conditions that we know food can be used for. Food can be your medicines at this time, and medicine can be your food. Chet.
What happened to the salt ND?
The plant didn't use it, Chet. It's just sitting there in the water. It only uses what it needs. As long as you have it at the root level, you never spray it on top because it will kill the leaves. But it's a very minor amount, it's a small amount of salt in there, okay? Because you only use 1 teaspoon of this concentrated in a whole gallon of water. It's very inexpensive, and they have a very, very small amount of, I think it's only like, if I remember correctly, 200 parts per million of sodium in there. So it's not enough to hurt your plant. And it thrives in it. Yes, sir?
Where do we get that salt?
Say again?
Where do we get the salt?
I'll share that with you. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my email address again, and I'd like for you to email me if you're interested, and I'll send you all this information. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The reason that I wanted to share that with you is because I know personally that there are people in our wonderful congregation here that are suffering from some of these conditions, and they need to know about it. I take them myself. Not because we're growing it, we know how to grow it, but because I need it. I have cancer in my family. My mom died, less than a year later, my dad died of cancer, so it was in my family. So I have a predisposition or hereditary propensity for it, so I'm going to be aware of this. And I also have a gene SNP, and I'll explain that when we get into the program a little bit. Does cancer scare you? Raise your hand if it does. Okay? How many of you have cancer? Let's see your hands. I'm sorry, everybody needs to raise their hand. Excuse me, you really do. Everybody has it, except for one beautiful part about it that God has designed is our immune system that fights it, that controls it. It's just something happens along the way that the body quits fighting it. And we're going to talk about a little bit of this. Now, what I'm going to present to you is controversial. Any of you that are in the medical profession, you've been trained in the allopathic array, this is going to be some strange stuff. This is materials that I have accumulated for over 38 years in working with cancer patients. I will tell you there are a number of Adventist institutions around this country right now. They may be in the private sector more than they are in the health system that are using some of these same techniques in controlling and curing diseases today. Cancer should not scare you. It's nothing more than an abnormality that's happened in the system that needs to be corrected. It just so happens that our medical institution has scared us to death with chemotherapy and radiation and surgery because that's all they know. And as I said, guys, you're going to have to understand this. What I'm telling you is fact, but it's controversial. So don't bite my head off because I'm the one doing the study and finding out these other doctors are correct. All right? So we're going to get started. I'm going to let you know that we're going to have 4 meetings on cancer. Okay? This first one that we're doing is going to be just kind of a real quick overview. We're going to talk about conventional therapies and what's wrong with them. And we're going to talk about natural therapies and what's wrong with them. And what's good about conventional therapies and what's good about natural therapies. I'm not going to leave you in a lurch here. You've individuals that are not willing or cannot follow a real strict, very strict regimen in natural medicine, then for goodness sakes, go get the chemo and radiation. Okay? All right? So we get started. I'm going to read you a text. This is found in Jeremiah, and Jeremiah the 8th chapter, and it's the 22nd verse. The prophet Jeremiah was talking to the leaders of Israel, And it says here very plainly, it says, is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physicians here? Why then is there no recovery of the health of the daughter of my people? Now I want you to remember that, because God has given us all of the information that we need to stay very, very healthy, to fight any of these conditions, whether it be chronic cholesterol issues, diabetic issues, high blood pressure issues, or cancer issues, okay? And they are curable. Every one of these is curable. Even type 1 diabetes, we'll talk about that at another time, but type 2 diabetes in particular, all right? All right. What is cancer? Cancer is a class of diseases characterized by uncontrolled cell division and the ability of these cells to invade other tissues, either by direct growth into tissue around it, or it can actually slough off and form metastasis anywhere in the body if your body is not healthy. All right? The cancer statistics are bleak. I'm going to share this with you. We're not going to go over some of these statistics. You can read them on any internet. They have it all around, talking about these. This actually came from the NIH, National Institute of Health. Mortality from cancer in the United States, I took the years in 67, 70, and 2012, and this is deaths per 100,000. Is it getting any better? Now, you will have the American cancer people tell you that it is getting better. But I'm going to tell you one thing real quick, that the prostate cancer in men and breast cancer in women is an epidemic proportion in our country. Why? We're going to talk about that, all right? In 2014, there will be an estimate of over 1.5 million new cancer cases diagnosed, and this is, by the way, comes directly from the CDC and the National Cancer people, okay, American Cancer people. And over almost 600,000 of these cancer deaths in the United States this year. Cancer remains the second most common cause of death in the United States, according. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that? Yeah. You believe that? Yeah. Raise your hand if you believe it. It's not. Cancer is the fourth leading cause of death in this country. You know what number one is?
Heart disease.
Nope, that's number two. What? Doctors, hospitals, sorry nurses, sorry doctors, and pharmaceuticals. Together, that's your medical treatment. I just described it in this country. It's allopathic medicine is the number one killer in this country. Okay? That's sad because it doesn't need to be. I talked to a doctor about this one time. I said, why do you prescribe mammograms? We know that mammograms will give your body about 1,000 times the amount of radiation as an X-ray. We also have statistics from around the world that mammograms can cause cancer. Why do you do this? And you know what the doctor told me? He said, we know they're always getting these false positives with it. And the answer was, if I didn't do it and a patient of mine gets cancer, I'd be sued. Now, is that a reason? Something's wrong with our country. Something's really wrong with this. I'll let you also know that I worked in pharmaceuticals for 20 years. And at that time, chemotherapy, we had, I think it was 5 different drugs on the market. Today, there are over 180. And I'll also share with you that in the pharmaceutical arena, right now today, because it's $1 trillion industry, there are 900 plus new chemicals they're studying right now for chemotherapy for your future. And all of these cause cancer. Now, there are two drugs in particular that I studied from the natural world. It's actually from the Madagascan periwinkle. They're called vincristine and vinblastine. They use it in children a lot for leukemia. It's a natural product that you find in these plants, but yet, you know what we found? There's a high incidence of death from cancer from these two drugs. I'm not trying to paint a totally bleak picture here, but I'm letting you know that there is a way to get cured of this so-called leprosy of the 21st century. And God has given it to us all along. It's been there. All we've got to do is just open His Word and read it. Okay? And it's also in the spirit of prophecy. We've had it for over 150 years. There is no excuse. Okay? So we eat wrong. We've made mistakes. And as those mistakes have been accumulative, and now we've got the disease, so what do? Let's talk about it. All right. Other cancer statistics, and I'm not going to go over this with you. I'm just going to read the last one. While surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation may, in some cases, help people, with all the billions of dollars spent on research since 1950, and with the astronomical increase in the cost of treating cancer, not much has been gained. All right. But I'm telling you, folks, it's putting a lot of money in the pharmaceutical manufacturers' pockets. Okay? Last year alone, there was $6 billion allocated for cancer research. Now, I know some cancer researchers at the University of Texas, Southwestern Medical Center, over at Moffitt in Tampa, and they have to beg to get a little bit of money to do some of their studies. Some of the physicians at Moffitt, they have to go out and get their own research. And so what do? They're going to find a company that wants to do some research, a pharmaceutical company, and they get their 10, 20 million bucks. And you know that their results have got to look good. And these doctors are telling us that they can slant these studies to make them look good or look better than they really are. Now, the reason why I got out of pharmaceutical sales, and again, this is a bleak picture. The reason I got out of the company was the fact that I found out that in our research in a stage 3 and stage 4 of clinical research, they were hiding some of the papers. They would not release them to the FDA. Why? Because it made the product look bad. And I blew the whistle on one of them. It was causing ulcerations in the lungs. It was a bronchodilator, and I got fired. Can you imagine that? They fired me. I was quitting anyway. The drug didn't make it to market, and whoever has any kind of lung problems, should thank me for it. And there are other guys that have done this in the industry that got a conscience. And I got out of that business. And there's a lot of it going on. So don't you think, for one, look, the doctors and the nurses, thank God we've got them. They do such wonderful work. But the fact of the matter is they've been duped into the same story that I was duped in for 20 years. Okay? All right. Cancer theories. Now, these are theories on what causes cancer. There's one called the internal enemy theory. Another one is the invader theory. And the third one, and there are others, but these are the three that I picked out, is called the environmental toxin theory. Okay, the predominant theory, this one in the internal enemy theory, it is the predominant theory of the medical establishment. It is simply this, that your body is genetically rebelling against itself, and it forms these rogue cells. One's own cell becomes the enemy and destroys the body which made them. It's kind of a biological decision for suicide. This can happen, okay? It does happen, but it's not the predominant one out here. The theories that the next two theories that I'm going to share with you, I want you to pay attention to these. The invader theory. This is simply that there are some microorganisms or organisms that come from the outside and it invades your system. And then in turn, It degenerates until it forms a cancerous condition, and these microorganisms can be viruses, can be bacteria, funguses, or parasitic organisms. This is true. They've just shown some new studies to indicate that there are some cancers that have been directly linked now with Candida, which is a fungus in our bodies. Everybody's got it, but if your system is not functioning properly, you get an increase in this material in your body, and it causes all kinds of nasty things, allergic reactions and what have you, and the worst of them being cancer. And there have been some recent stuff that I got that a doctor was performing surgeries on cancer, and he would pull it out, and it was just completely covered in Candida. Now, he says it was because the cells were mutant, but the other doctor said it's probably because of the Candida. Studies will continue to go on with that. Now, this one, environmental toxin theory, I have to agree with this one. The theory holds that the runaway growth of cells is stimulated by external toxins. The association made in many studies between toxins and cancer is so clear as to be irrefutable. Cancer prevention and probably cancer treatment as well has much to do with avoiding and eliminating exposure to these toxins. Where do we get exposed to these toxins? Can you see that? It's kind of hard to see, isn't it? Simply look at air, soil, water, and food. As I said, last year, there were 2,000 new chemicals that were released into our atmosphere, into our environment, excuse me. Some were atmosphere, some were gaseous. The sad part about it is very few studies have been done on the toxicity of these. Now, they know from studies of other chemistry that looks like that, they're carcinogenic. This next statement this whole thing I'm going to read to you. In the United States, 77% of all new cancer cases are found in people over the age 65. Pay attention to this now, this is important. Many doctors believe that this number is attributed to constant building of toxins in our bodies starting from before our birth. This next statement, in 2005, this was done by the Environmental Working Group, July 14, found 287 industrial chemicals in the umbilical cord of newborns. Of these, 180 of these were cancer-causing, carcinogenic. How did it get there? You have any ideas how that might have gotten into the umbilical cord of a newborn? What's mom been eating? She said, I've been eating a good diet. I've been eating a lot of vegetables. I have a little milk for my calcium. You know, I might eat a little cheese. I eat chickens. I don't eat beef. And this is routinely the questions that we ask and the answers that we get back. So all you have to do is start looking at the food chain, let alone what we're breathing. Add to that then that cigarette smoke and other things that's in our environment, and you've compounded your problem. These are collected, they are not excreted. This is important to understand. They are collected. It's accumulative in your system. So as we get older and older, we have more cancers now in this country, in this age group, because of that. And I do subscribe to this one. I really do. Because now we have found this in this particular study. This was from the National Cancer Institute. Less than 25% of the world's cancer population was genetically predisposed to cancer. Everybody says it's hereditary. I did too. Approximately 80% of cancer cases are caused by environmental factors. That's from National Cancer Institute. This was a study that's just recently, it's ongoing. In other words, cancer is preventable for the vast majority of people. With the proper knowledge, vigilance, and some commitment, most people can prevent cancer. Okay, got toxins in our bodies. How do we get rid of them? How do you get rid of them?
What's wrong with diet?
Diet has a lot to do with it. They're accumulated in your fatty tissue right now. Okay, and that's one of the things that I used to say when we were in pardon me for saying this, our fat farm. This was a institute I worked for. People would come in there extremely obese, and they put them on a rapid weight loss program, and inevitably they get sick. What was happening is they were dumping all these toxins and they weren't getting rid of them. But we can do this on a normal basis. Increase your fiber intake and increase your water. Right now, you can start right now today getting rid of some of these things out of the body. We know that there are some chelating vegetables out there that we can eat to help chelate some of this stuff out of our bloodstream. Cilantro is good. You know, most of cruciferous vegetables will do this. But they have to be green and leafy and fresh and grown organically. Otherwise, we're putting more junk back in our systems. All right? Now, in future seminars, I'm going to take certain aspects of natural cancer remedies, prevention, and treatment. Okay? And we'll take individual components of these things. Today, I'm going to share at least two with you that you really can take home, because now we have studies on these to back them up. Natural cancer treatment. Okay? All right. There are two types in this country. There are others, but let me just stick. Can I just stick with these? Allopathic or the regular conventional therapies and natural therapies, all right? Allopathic therapy, what do you have? Chemo, radiation, surgery. Is that about it? Did I miss anything, anybody? Okay, this costs about $20 billion a year. $200 billion a year, excuse me. This was just from Medicare. This was just from Medicare. It's a big industry. There's a lot of money being made in this industry, guys. Now, chemotherapy, I want to read some of this to you. Chemotherapy drugs work almost indiscriminately on rapidly dividing cells, usually poisoning them from free radical toxic action. The risks are largely in side effects. Chemotherapy drugs, both oral and injectable, poison the whole body. Nearly all of these drugs are themselves what? Carcinogenic. Anybody doubt that? This statement actually came from the medical profession. These are MDs that have blown the whistle on this stuff. Now, if you're taking a drug that can cause cancer to get rid of cancer, that just doesn't seem right to me for some reason. But what does chemotherapy do to the cell? It destroys cancer cells, right? Isn't it what it's supposed to do? Well, what about the other cells in your body? You know what a real great oncologist from Moffitt told me? We were in a roundtable discussion about 4 years ago. And he said, Bill, what we do with it, and we've got it down to an art, is we take the patient this close to death and then hope and pray they survive it, because we know we kill the cancer cells. There's something wrong with this theory. Do you think God intended that to happen to us as humans? Something that you're poisoning yourself with just because you've got a disease that are already poisoning your system? I don't think so. Okay, the other part of this, the depression and all the other stuff that happens with chemotherapy. Does chemotherapy work? It does. It really does. I've got statistics that say it does. I got one statistic that said this is from the CDC, they say 12%. So if you're taking it, you've got a 12% survival rate. Okay? The doctors that are actually using the drug say 3%. So here you're taking a drug that can actually kill you for a 3% chance of survival. But if you got cancer, you know what? Probably take it, wouldn't you? Or would you not? Okay, all right. Radiation therapy. Radiation, by the way, the chief of radiology oncology from Moffitt is one that I was talking to about the more select radiation that they had. And I wanted to make sure I had my statistics right way back when I first started doing this. And so he was giving me some information, and I said, Doc, I'm truthful. Does radiation really work for prostate, breast cancer, because that's what we were talking about? And he said, no. It doesn't. Now, if you go and talk to your oncologist or your radiologist, he's going to refute what I said. He's going to say the boy's lying. He doesn't know what he's talking about. This is from the chief of radiology oncology at Moffitt. He's also a professor. And he gave me the reasons why. And so it's out there, and it's something that they are using to treat cancer. It's just not working. But yet we are told that it does, right? Aren't we? Did you not believe that coming in here, and especially if you're a health professional? Unless you're an oncologist or a radiologist oncologist. A host of epidemiological studies have strongly suggested that X-rays and other ionizing radiation are a cause of most types of human cancer. X-rays may even be responsible for most of the deaths from cancer and ischemic heart disease, according to John Goffman, MD, PhD, professor at UC Berkeley. And he is a leading authority in cancer. Truth's coming out. By the way, he's no longer working there. Okay. Doctors are coming out of the closet, and they're telling the truth. It's a big, big industry, folks. And I'm going to tell you what, if all of a sudden some obscure little doctor down in Alabama or Texas found a cure for this stuff, they don't want to hear it. Why? Do you actually think, do any of you actually believe that the money that you give for breast cancer research or the money you give for cancer research is going to research? Do you think they want a cure for cancer? I'm telling you, the doctors themselves don't want a cure for cancer because that's how they make their money. $1 trillion industry worldwide. Hey, folks, we got to quit this. It's got to be, you got to stop it. You cannot believe everything that you hear, and you shouldn't believe everything that I tell you. You need to study it on your own. If you got a disease of any kind, whether it be chronic or otherwise, you need to study it on your own. Get both sides of the picture. All right? But if you're not going to do natural therapy, then please get radiation and chemo. Okay? Cancer surgeries, again, in one experiment that mimicked surgical conditions, scientists reported that the binding of cancer cells to the blood vessel walls was increased by 250% compared to cancer cells not exposed to surgical conditions. Do you know what metastasis is? When a cancer cell migrates through the bloodstream, all the lymph system, and settles somewhere else and begins to grow, usually a collection of cells, not just one. Do you know what the major reason and causes of metastasis in cancer patients today is? You have any idea? Surgery and biopsies. Now, you go on the website and they'll tell you that that's a lie. If you go on to the American Cancer or any of these others, the National Cancer Institute, they'll tell you that's not true. But it's absolute factual. They've already done studies on it, most of them coming out of Europe. But this one particular study here said 250% higher level of adhesions, cells will adhere to the other parts of the body and start forming another colony of cancer cells. Metastasis, usually the person doesn't die from the primary tumor. They usually die from the metastasis. That's what killed my mom and my first wife and my dad. And we talked to the doctors about it, and they absolutely denied it. Sure they would. I said, that's not going to happen. That doesn't happen to us. We get them all. When we cut that stuff out, it's all gone. Hogwash. Treating cancer naturally. Now, I'm going over different treatment concepts here, okay? Then we're going to get into specifics. We're going to still skim the top with it, all right? First is the immune system. What did we say about it? Again, if the body is not at its peak in its fighting form and it doesn't fight these conditions, whether it be a microorganism or whether there's a rogue cell, the immune system just not strong enough to fight it. So is the immune system important to help you fight cancer? Do you agree with that? Okay. All right. The next one is the metastatic processes. We'll get into that at a later time. I'm going to talk a little bit about some natural products that we've discovered, and this particular one is one of those little secrets that you need to know. And again, I'm going to tell you, you need to go study it yourself, okay? Angiogenesis. Do you know what angiogenesis is? Okay, when a cell goes rogue, cancer cells don't die, they divide. And they keep dividing as old, nasty cells. And after they get to divide and they get so large, there is a chemical reaction that happens in the cells themselves. That tumor begins to form blood vessels that go to the next bloodstream near it, and when it connects to it, it begins to grow exponentially. Up until that point, it may be slow grower. You may have cancer in your system for 10, 20, 30 years. And until this happens, it doesn't grow anymore, nor is it really dangerous. It's important that we are doing something with our immune system to get rid of it before it gets to this point, because once it gets to this point where the bloodstream is feeding it, it really grows rapidly. Now, there are some anti-angiogenic compounds out there, and we'll talk about those a little bit here and in the future seminars. Apoptosis, how many of you know what that is? I think some of you do. Right. We talked about it, right? Apoptosis is programmed cell death. The cells in your body every cell lives about 120 days, 121 days. Cancer cells don't die, they just keep growing. So studying and trying to determine, is there any way that we could find a magic bullet that would trigger programmed cell death of cancer cells of this apoptotic effect, we'd have a cancer cure, wouldn't we? Guess what? They've already discovered it. It's been out there for almost 15 years already. And yet I've not read anything in the newspaper or heard anything on television about this. None whatsoever. But these doctors in England and a couple of physicians over here in this country curing cancer today with this. It works. And I'm going to share a couple of compounds with you that you can take, and it'll help trigger this very effect of programmed cell death. Inflammation. Inflammatory conditions in the body can be a predisposition for cancer. Cancer can cause inflammation, and inflammation can cause cancer, okay? So we need to talk about how to stop the inflammatory conditions in our system. There's one that you know about. You cut your finger and it gets red and irritated. That's an inflammation, right? If you're suffering from irritable bowel syndrome, that's inflammation. If you have an ulcer, that's inflammation. But there's also another one called silent inflammation that you don't know you've got it. This inflammation is the most dangerous one out there. Now, there are some markers that we can have in blood tests. Homocysteines, which are small proteins that are circulating in our system, is one way. C-reactive protein is another one. And, of course, cholesterol itself is also considered a marker for this type of silent inflammation. Oxidation, simply put, you need to practice this. Oxygenate your system. Most of us are in stagnant form all the time. Unless you're doing aerobic exercises, out walking in the air, taking deep breaths and practicing this, you have a tidal volume in the lungs that is stagnant, and you need to get rid of it so your body can oxygenate properly, because guess what? It's true, cancer can't grow around oxygen. It's anaerobic, not aerobic. Okay? So exercise is the best, right? How many of you exercise every day? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I didn't raise my hand because I don't. Shame on me. Right? Well, no. I wish it would work because then I could sit on this. Picking up boxes in the room. No, that's something that you did. You set out to get. I don't mean that you have to get, out of breath when you're exercising. But if you are walking, so you get a sweat going, but you can still talk to someone next to you instead of trying to catch your breath. That's exercising. That's moving it. But you need to practice, even if you're not exercising, folks, you need to practice deep breathing exercises. Do you know how to do that? How? Tell me. Okay.
Smell roses and blow out the candles. Basically how we're supposed
Right.
to deep breathe.
Right. And how often do you do that, and how much you do? You're not doing enough to get dizzy.
7 times you can do it, and even doing it for 7 times, it puts you to sleep. It does. Take some deep breath. You can't sleep at night. You take a deep breath, and you put it right in, and you let it out, and you live a step through your mouth, and you let it out. And 7 times, you fall asleep. You're gone.
Try this sometimes, when you are out, maybe outside, just take a deep breath. And if you think you got all you can take, you can't breathe anymore, but stop and do it again. And then take your rib cage and lift it up, just ever so gently, and breathe some more. And then exhale it all, and then when you think you've exhaled it all out, then push it some more and get it all out of there. You only have to do that about 4 or 5 times. You're not going to get dizzy and fall out, unless you're really bad. All right. Oxidation is extremely important. Detoxifying the system. This is one that I do talk about a lot because we do get a lot of toxins in our system. And we already talked about this, from environmental toxins, from the food that we eat, from the air we breathe, from the water we drink, and what have you like this. So how do you get them out of your system? And this is nearly an entire program that we're going to have on how to detoxify your system. And I hope that you do come to that one because this is important. It really is. Okay, and then diet. We will talk about diet probably all through all of them. But the simple fact of the matter is that we need to eat more green leafy vegetables and more fresh fruits and seeds, grains, and nuts. And stay away from processed foods, refined foods, all together, especially if you got a condition. All right? Okay. The immune system. Cancer starts with one cell after its DNA is altered by free radicals, toxic exposure, ultraviolet radiation, or a random error in cell division. Most of the time, this change in the DNA isn't a big deal. Either the change is harmless or it is so damaging as to be fatal to the cell. But sometimes the changed DNA gives the cell new abilities, while at the same time discounting it from the community of the body. In 2003, I was at a seminar, and the doctor was talking about enzymes that form around cancer cells. And of course, I didn't know what he was leading into because we've all known this in science for some time that, these particular enzymes build around a cancer cell and a tumor, but it's not around normal cells. Now, what we always thought that this is just the way that cancer cells survive, it's like that survival thing. Because when it forms these enzymes around these cells, these malignant and tumorous cells, the immune system just goes right by it. It looks like it's part of the body because these enzymes are part of our body. And it wasn't until about 2005 that we heard the first term. It was called phytoalexins, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But these are plant-based chemicals. We found that these phytoalexins are the plant's own defensive mechanisms. And it may vary in its chemical profile. It may be different in one. It may be a phenolic compound in one, and it may be a flavonoid in another. But these are there to protect the plant from injury and invasion from viruses and bacteria and funguses. But the neat part about this is they also trigger the effects that we need in our system. And what it does, remember I talked about apoptosis? When these enzymes are activated by these plant chemicals, it causes apoptosis of the cancer cell. Just that simple. It causes the cell to die. Cancer cells, not normal cells. I haven't done anything to hurt any normal cells yet, okay, in the treatments that I've talked about. It's selective. It's the magic bullet. I want to tell you, it's so sad. Most of the studies are coming out of Japan, China, India, Pakistan, and Europe. Very few are going on in this country to identify these. You know why they don't have any studies going on this? Do you want to guess? What? Guess. There's no money in it. The tangerine peeling that they've discovered over there at the School of Pharmacy in England, where they were curing prostate cancer, guess what? Go get a tangerine and eat it. Eat the peeling. I don't like that. But they were using the chemical out of the tangerine peeling to cure prostate cancer. In South America, in Ecuador, there's a plant there called graveolea. I don't know, maybe some of you know about this. The seed of this plant will cure many types of cancer. They've done it down there at the universities there in Guayaquil and Quito both. I've not heard one mention of it in any institution in the United States. I will tell you this, Eli Lilly went down there to study it. This is factual because one of their chemists told us this. They tried to isolate out of the seed what was causing this anti-cancer effect, and they could never identify it. So what do? They abandoned their studies. And they didn't say anything about it wasn't good, it was indifferent, or anything like that. They just quit putting money into it because they could not isolate it out and make their own their own chemical out of it. That's kind of sad stuff, folks, that we're telling you. But being in this study that I have for all these years, you know, we get to the crux of it when we talk to some of these scientists. And it's important that you know these things. Somebody's got to tell somebody about this. The immune system, and then I'm not going to belate this anyway. These are some of the supplements that can increase the activity of the natural killer cells in the immune system. The IP6 is an inositol hexaphosphate. IP6 is a very, very good product. It has been shown to be very effective in breast and prostate cancer. The maitake diffraction is another one. These are mushrooms, the medicinal mushrooms from China, been around a long time, and they're getting some tremendous effects out of some of the studies that they've been doing, that they're really applauding it right now. Another one is the PSK, that is also from a mushroom. The AHCC, which is the active hexose correlated compound, that is from shiitake mushroom from Japan. And it does the same thing. It causes apoptosis of the cancer cells. The other one is MGN3, that is a rabinogalactan. And what this is, folks, this is simply a beta-glucan that they find in rice. You can get it out of other grains too. So what did I say, one of the food groups? Nuts, seeds, and grains. Because you can get the glucans out of that. Your beta-glucans right out of the grains that you're eating. And they are definitely will build the immune system. And here is one that I want to share with you. There have been, just so you know, the one that I'm going to show you, I call it the natural cancer chemo. And anybody that would hear me say that would laugh at me in the medical profession, because it's not really chemo. But it is the one that they're studying around the world. There are over 830 studies done on this, and this is what it is. Do you know what that is? Anybody know what that is? What? No? Anybody else want to guess? Yeah. Say it out loud. What? No. There it is. Vitamin D3. took this for your cancer, you know how much it would cost you? $100 a year. I got to share this with you. 830 studies. In those studies, they found that vitamin D3, by the way, D3, the cholecalciferol, the one that is the active component in our body that converts directly into the active component. By the way, it's not a vitamin, just so you know. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. Okay? It's actually a hormone. Okay, a steroid. 830 studies. If you put a list of diseases in the United States, just list them, all the different diseases, vitamin D3 will play a role in this. It's almost like a panacea. It's like too good to be true. But what they did with this, and you notice the dosage. Any of you subscribe to the RDI, recommended daily intake? Any of you? Do you believe that's for your good? Do you think that the United States government released something that's good for you? If you went by the RDI or RDA, recommended daily intake or allowances, you die. You got to take more. Well, right at the lower end of that dosage of the D3 at 600 IUs, I'm way out ahead of what they're suggesting you use. What we discovered is that you have if you start at your vitamin D, you can have a lab test done of this. LabCorp does one. If your D in your system is below 40 nanograms per milliliter, you've got to get it up. And I dare say there may be only one or two of us in here that have a D that high. If you want to fight a disease, you got to get it up to 50 and possibly 75 nanograms per milliliter. So that's the reason I put the dosages up there. You notice the other vitamin I have up there with it? I have vitamin K, and I do that strictly for this. The doctors get all upset if you go in there and say, oh, I'm going to go on 1,000, IUs of vitamin D. The doctor's going to say, you're going to die. Or your calcium is going to just clog every artery in your body. Put a little K with it, and it stops all of that. That's the reason it's up there. It doesn't happen. But it wouldn't happen anyway, because if you're out in the sun, you notice that it says 8,000 IUs, right? Do you know how much you get from 20 minutes of exposure in sunlight if you have just a bathing suit on? Do you know how much vitamin D you get in your body? Have any idea? 10,000 IUs from sun exposure. Oh, wait. I just said it cost you $100. Forget that. Sunbathe. And you've got your cancer cure. You think it's that simple? It is. And it's because we do not take enough. We do not get enough sunlight. And if you're not going to get the sunlight, if you have predisposition to skin cancer or whatever, photosensitive to the light, take it orally. Very easy to get it. And like I said, it'll cost you about $100 a year to take this kind of amount. Yes? Yes, ma'am. Right. 20 minutes exposure a day.
But you should probably take a shower before, no lotions and stuff.
Oh, well, yeah, it's true. Right.
And then allows that process to take
Right.
before, so
Right.
before we shower again.
Exactly.
And it depends on the time of day, certain time.
Yeah, 10 to 2. And I would never tell anybody to sunbathe from 10 to 2. Because that's the hottest part of the day. That's the highest rays right at the time. I always tell them before 10 and after 3. But now I'm not, no. If you got a cancer situation, no. 10 to 2. Okay? Yeah.
I did a study that shows that those numbers are basically given to clear skinned people.
Okay.
But for black people, dark skinned people, then I need to multiply that by almost 6 times.
Right, but again, that's the reason why I put up the dosage up there, Grantley, because it doesn't matter that way. You're getting it into your system. And it's sometimes very easy to do this when people don't have the time to sunbathe. There's a lot of them out there working and still got cancer, you know. And take this. This is important. This is really, truly, I mean, I do it tongue in cheek, saying it's like natural chemotherapy, but it is really very, very good. And it's so simple and so inexpensive. I told you I was going to share these things with you guys. I mean, if you don't take anything away from this seminar except this alone, I've done my job. Okay? All right. The metastatic processes, and now what I did mention to you is that surgery and some of these things, but there's other causes for the metastasis to form in the system. Breast cancer, or cancer in particular, can be bumped and aggravated, you know, through inflammation, and it can slough off cells and cause a metastatic process. You don't necessarily have to go under a biopsy or surgery to get this, but it is the leading cause of the metastatic process, okay? It's the leading cause of metastasis is surgery and biopsy. You touch that cancer, and you're going to have problems. And you know what? Most doctors know this. So then they say, okay, we've done this now, you got to take chemotherapy. Why? It's because chemo will kill that circulating cancer. But guess what else will kill it? Any of you ever heard of this? This is number 2. Modified citrus pectin. I want you to remember that. I want it echoes in your brain. Okay? You know why? Because if we would take that periodically ourselves, you know, in case we think we've got cancer, or if we just have a predisposition for it, or family history of it again, you can take it periodically because it will kill the metastasis as it starts to form. Okay?
Can you get that?
The health food stores has it. Anybody has it. Vitacost, I get it from them a lot on television. I mean, on the computer. Vitacost.com. Blood-borne cancer cells can be intercepted by an aggressive and alert immune system. So immune support is again critical here. Beyond that, there is a major approach to this problem. This blood-borne cancer cell express adhesive molecule on their surfaces, and that help them stick to blood vessel walls and climb out into the surrounding tissue. Modified citrus pectin can bind to these receptors, blocking them. There have been 892 studies on this, most of them in Europe. And you know, you talk to a doctor here in this country and they won't even acknowledge the study from England or Germany. And yet nearly every pharmaceutical that you take today had its start over in Germany. Because I work for 2 companies from there, and I know. But this is where we're getting our information. There are some institutions studying this now, I will tell you that, here in the United States, to try to find out exactly what is the mechanism of action. Why does this stuff? And it is, do you know what pectin is? Do any of you know what pectin is? It's fiber. It's actually a soluble fiber. So when we talk about detoxification, we're going to talk about it again. But other soluble fibers work, but not as well as this one. All right? Okay. Angiogenesis, I will just simply, I've already told you about primarily what this does. If you notice down at the bottom, a couple of things there that I will bring out is the field bindweed is a very, very good product for this. They talk about shark cartilage, and yeah, shark cartilage does stop it's anti-angiogenic, and there are other compounds, and when we get into this particular area of study, you know, at a future seminar, we're going to talk more about the anti-angiogenic effect of some of these natural products we have. By the way, the cruciferous vegetables, again, do this as well. All right? All right, apoptosis. I mentioned what this is programmed cell death. Here's number 3. You ready for it? Apoptosis, programmed cell death. Very, very important. I told you about tangerine peeling, right? I'm talking to you about another one. It's called CellQuest. Now, this particular compound, It's from the pseudostem of the plantain plant, or we get it from bananas too. What we do is after the fruit is harvested, we take the stem, which is the primary pseudostem, we cut it, we clean it, we squeeze it, and the juice that's in there will cause apoptosis in cancer cells. And you know how we found out about this? A doctor, an old doctor, he was nearly 90 years old when he got here from Cuba, had studied it during the blockade days in Cuba when they couldn't get medicine. You know, when Kennedy blocked the whole country, you couldn't get anything in or out. Then they continue having to treat their people, and that's what caused them to find, because from some old ancient writings and what have you, from the Aztecs, the Incas, and the Mayans all use this. They found that it has some effect on certain kinds of conditions. They didn't call it cancer, but it was. And as he studied it, he actually called it, this doctor did say, that this was probably causing something for the cancer cells to die, but he had no idea what it was doing. Well, if you notice down at the bottom, where was it studied? H. Lee Moffitt, Tampa. And that's when I was introduced to it, in a study there at Moffitt. Every cancer they tested it on, it killed it. And this was an injectable form of it, but the oral form was about 80% as effective as the injectable. Now, this product is available today, but you will not find anything on their website about cancer whatsoever. Because when I went in there with these people, they were in trouble with the FDA. They'd already pretty much shut them down because they had mentioned the studies from Moffitt, and there's 8 of them, and 2 from, Shands Teaching Hospital in Gainesville, that they'd studied this in cancer patients, and the tissue culturing that they did. So they mentioned it, CellQuest mentioned it on their website, and the FDA came after them. You can't say anything about this because you're indicating that your product is a cancer cure. And the doctor that was there said, it is. He said, but you can't say it because you've got to prove it in clinical studies. Well, okay, we'll do clinical studies. How much money would it take? About $40 million. Okay, we'll do it. Well, you can't. Why? Because you can't study this because we don't know what chemical there's doing it. I said, well, it may not be one chemical. It may be everything that God put in it. The whole plant. Well, you can't study it in this country for cancer. Period. Done. Over with. Out the door they go. So you know why I'm a little bit irritated with the government. These kinds of things don't need to be hidden from you people. They don't. So I promised them that I'd go out and preach it. This stuff we've had so many cancer patients that were terminal, stage 3, 3C, stage 4. And I will give you the array: melanoma, esophageal, neoblastoma, pancreatic 3 types, colon, colorectal, prostate, breast 3 types, all cured. Over 10,000 patients have gone on this, and I wish I could tell you that everybody was cured, but they weren't. But of the 100 patients that I studied, only 2 of them have died. Since 2003, 4? Jules, when I first introduced that? It causes apoptosis of the cancer cell. It's like a select little magic bullet that you take it into your system and it triggers the apoptotic effect in cancer cells. We know this because Moffitt told us so. Okay, enough preaching. Chet.
How is this marketed?
In a liquid form, juice directly out of it. It is pasteurized.
Where do you, I mean, how? Where do you get it?
Off the internet. Just type in cellquest.com. It is. Yeah. I take it as a preventative. I was asked a question up here, what is for treating cancer, or it wouldn't be for preventative. Oh, yes, it is for preventative too. All of these are. Everything that I've mentioned is a preventative. Why not? Guess what? They're all good. They're not going to cause you hair fall out. They're not going to cause you to vomit. They're not going to cause you to get sick. They're not going to cause you to die from poisoning. Okay? So it can be a preventative. I had a question in the back.
No, I was just trying to differentiate what kind, is it the plantain tree that is found
It's
in banana?
It's Musa paradisica, and it's the same as a banana tree. In fact, we've even used the Cavendish banana, which is the one you get at Chiquita and all the others, you know. If we can find an organic one, but most of them are, you know, they use all kinds of sprays on them and everything else, but there are a few out here that are organic. Plantains, all of them are organic. The ones grown down in Immokalee, down in LaBelle, down in Clewiston, all the way down into Homestead. We've got 4 or 5 other places that are growing it here in this country. And if you want to grow your own, what I suggest that you do is you simply take it, you squeeze it. You can do it through, there's all kinds of ways of squeezing juice out of that, like sugar cane, okay? Squeeze the juice, you take it, you filter off the material out of it, put it on the stove, and heat it up to about 140 degrees and turn it off. And it's ready to drink. It's the stem, the trunk. You know, bananas are not trees. They're grasses. You know, they are what we call in the scientific world, they are monocots, just like the grass out here. And so, but you call it a tree because it looks like a tree, the trunk of it. But it's a grass. And then whenever that one stalk produces bananas, you know, then it dies, and another one of the tree stumps will come up, and it'll form the next one that produces bananas. Well, they usually just discard that. But we take that trunk, or they take that trunk, I say we, they take that trunk and they take it and clean it and then grind it up, and that's what they have. And they do about, I say close to 2,000 gallons a month that they're getting off of some of the trees here locally, down in Ruskin and what have you. There's another gentleman in the Dominican Republic doing it, and there's another one that's in Ecuador, and he's going to start doing it as well. So as more of this stuff comes out and it's more available, then I would suggest strongly. I'm going to be, I've been over to a company in Apopka called AgriStart, and they have developed some cultivars, or these are hybrid bananas, from these 2 particular type of trees that produce the plantain. And we're going to grow those ourselves on our farm for this particular thing. And it's great for internal usage, but it's also great for the skin. We've been using it in some acne studies. Yes, ma'am?
Back home, if we get a cut,
Yeah,
a deep cut, that's exactly what they would use to put on the cut.
right.
Yes, but it does not,
Yeah.
things are coming back.
Yes, ma'am.
Makes sense.
We just want to be clear, because the banana tree or the plantain tree, usually it's hanging. Then you have the stem, and then you have the leaf.
You take the fruit off.
Right.
After it's harvested, they take the whole trunk all the way up to the leaves.
Okay.
In fact, we even use some of the leaves, but you use that whole trunk is full of water.
So
You gotta remember, those big broad leaves, when the sun hits it, it pulls a lot of water out of the ground. And it's all in the stem.
So,
And-
go ahead.
Okay.
No, finish it.
And what we discovered recently is that when the banana bloom comes out, we harvest it then. We don't wait anymore, we don't wait for it to fruit. Because the fruit here in this country is not very great anyway. But the tree is very good.
So
Okay?
it's
The whole stalk, and it's round,
so that's what we
use. Okay. And you know what, they have used them as small around as, 3 or 4 inches, and you still get a lot of juice out of them, okay? If you teach somebody, what to do for these types of things, and you could grow them yourselves, so much easier than trying to find somebody that sells it to you. But if you can't, you don't have time, do it yourself.
Doctor,
Yeah.
how can we get the plant now in an organic fashion? And you said most of them are organic, right?
The ones that are grown here in Florida are all organic. They don't need anything else for them down here. Plantain and bananas both.
Does he have plantain?
Any other question about that? Okay.
But it's not a corn that can survive in the cold.
Well, that's what I used to think. Guess what? The new ones coming out today that they cross-pollinated them, now will grow as far as North Carolina and produce bananas. And they survive the winter. They mulch around the bottom and they survive the winter. They come right back again. These new cultivars that are coming out are marvelous. Hey, let me ask you a question. When you had corn originally, when we first came to this country, most of the corn was grown where? In Mesoamerica, right? Isn't that right? Mexico, Central America, is that where the corn comes from? Yeah, well, study history. Where does corn grow now?
Northeast.
Where? Nebraska? Same thing's going to happen with bananas and these other important fruits like this, you know. And it's a grass. It acclimates very quickly.
Corn is planted every spring. Bananas, what we're trying to get a banana to grow.
I'm not comparing them, Chet. I'm just simply saying they're going to create cultivars that'll grow as far as Canada before it's over with. That's their plans. I talked to the people doing the work on it right now. They are asking us to do some work on it. I'm not going to.
How much of the drink? How much of the drink should a person aim to use?
16 ounces minimum a day, 32 ounces recommended for cancer patients.
Well, they've got a banana there advertising out there, so way out.
I know.
So you don't even have to take it in for winter.
Right, no.
Out there and,
This guy's actually producing very good bananas up there in North Carolina.
Does this have to be a producing banana plant?
Doesn't, nope, does not, does not. Nope.
Couple of years ago, I grew up in Rockville Mill.
Yeah, right. No, it doesn't have to produce fruit at all. Okay. All right, well, we are having to close right here. I'll pick this up next time from the rest of this and the other parts of this because we are going to get into a lot on diet and what have you. Now, the three that I want you to remember, vitamin D3, modified citrus pectin, and Musa juice. Musa is the name of it. It's a banana or plantain, either one. Okay?
But you find it on the web as
CellQuest. Okay. Any other questions? Comments? You want to throw rocks at me? Oh, it was controversial. I'll tell you what, before we go, I would love for comments to be made. I'm going to give you my email address. You got a pencil? Anybody that wants to know about the microgreens or anything, any comments, something else you might want to know about or whatever like that, please email me. It's fine, you know. I definitely will answer you sometime in 2 or 3 years, as soon as I can. Okay, it's Dr. as in doctor, Bill, B-I-L-L, NMD, Nancy Mary David at gmail.com. It's DRBILL, NMD, Nancy Mary David at gmail.com. Dr. Bill, NMD, Nancy Mary David, NMD. Sorry, that's from old cop days. Can't get over it. At Gmail, yes, right. Okay. Yeah. I tell you what, can we stand and have a word of prayer? I'd appreciate it. Chester, could I get you to have prayer for us?
Father in heaven, we thank you for this Sabbath day. Thank you for the knowledge that you've given us of many things that we can do to participate in our health from the things that you've provided in nature. As we worship on this day, it's honoring you as the Creator. May we take it to heart that these products are available to us and that you provided them for us, and that we need to take. In Jesus we ask. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chester. Appreciate it. I appreciate your help too.